Metal Men issue 1, Dan Didio writing with Shane Davis on the art.
Hmm. So Pete, you're pretty unfamiliar with the Metal Men, right?
I mean, I'm familiar with them to a point, but yeah,
Yeah, but you're not like, whereas you know their history
sure,
and
yeah.
the responsometer and all this other stuff, which is who I think this book was geared toward. So I'm curious to see where you land before uh, I put my 2 cents in.
It worked for me well enough. I
Okay.
think it did a good job of just selling this idea of these five robots who think they're sentient, and Magnus kind of reveals that no, you're not really sentient. I've failed every time I've tried. It fakes sentience pretty well, but you're not really alive. Um, and it simultaneously reveals that from Challenger Mountain, because of all the Dark Multiverse stuff, it
Hmm.
reappeared. There was a liquid metal entity inside the volcano or the mountain,
Yep.
which they
An
discover.
nth metal
An nth metal, yes.
or liquid nth metal.
Liquid nth metal. I can almost see Robert Patrick in my head right now.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so, I like what it's set up. I like that he's kind of rejuvenated at the end. He's like, oh, there's sentient nth metal with a mind of its own. Oh, I'm getting in on this. I'm going to rebuild my Metal Men and see what I can do. Um, that's interesting. So tell me, the history of Metal Men.
Mhm.
Is this a huge shock? This idea that they've never actually been sentient before?
Yes, because there's been so many different versions of them, and that each one's a little bit different, and because of continuity and whatnot, and that, as it were, so he built the responsometers, right? And the responsometers is what's responsible for bringing them to life, and that's where the soul of each one inhabits. But also, they get character traits from the metal that they're based on. So, like
Hmm.
iron, of course, iron's always super strong. Lead's super durable. Gold's like the heart of the team. And then you had Mercury, who's kind of in a liquid state because it's the one metal that's actually in can go into liquid form. And you had Tin, who is always a little bit um, kind of like Piglet from Winnie the Pooh, afraid of
Mm-hmm.
everything, but is there. And then in the 90s, I feel it's the 90s or 2000s, they introduced Platinum, who's this Tina character who you always kind of feel that Magnus had put a lot into her as, this was like a woman that had gotten away. And but she was also like, I don't want to say the heart of the team or the soul of the team, but when she came in, it kind of changed the dynamics as it was the first lady, right? And so for basically Didio to come in and say that no, they've never been truly sentient because they were all based off of the thoughts and attitudes of Dr. Magnus himself. I feel that's real good sci-fi. I don't know if I like that for the Metalmen though, because it takes a bit of that character away from them and going like, oh no, it was me the whole time, and like these zany fun
Well,
adventures.
here's the thing
That
though. I feel like
Yeah.
one of two things is going to happen. We're going to get a story here where sentience is achieved by the end
Hmm.
of the story, right?
Hmm.
Or we're going to get to a point here where he realizes that he was wrong and they did have
Yeah.
sentience. He just didn't understand it. Um,
Right. And that's where I hope it is, because you also the thing with Dr. Magnus is he's very full of himself. That is his fatal flaw.
yeah, no, because I do love actually when he starts talking about Ivo and Morrow. He's like,
Or,
yeah, he's like, those pretenders, those charlatans. I'm the real
right.
scientist.
And so yeah, so that was always part of the thing with the Metal Men because they were all relatively good natured. They would kind of bring the Doc down to his back down to level. But I did like here that they've all been different. So all the Metalmen we've ever seen have existed. They've been different adventures, and what accounts for differences over
Yeah,
time.
but it gives it this kind of dark thing where he's got this room
Yeah,
full of all these dead robots
and
that he's
that
discontinued.
it always happens, and it reminded me of like I forget what movie it is, but you find out that they've been going through these loops, and that only certain people are aware of it,
Mm.
and like I'm gonna have to tell them because this is what always happens.
Do you,
Uh,
I think I like this just in the sense, and again, I don't have I mean, I've read 52, which they're in a fair chunk
yeah.
of, and I've read a few other things, but I think I like this on its, at least on its own, as a dark bit of sci-fi where there's this really dark tinge to it, where they're just being retried over and over again, and the previous ones are just being abandoned. There is a kind of a sad, dark science fiction take here that I kind of like.
Yeah, it's very Black Mirror with the Metal Men, which to me, I like lighter. I like my Metal Men. Like my favorite Metal Men story was by it was a backup. I forget which book, but with Giffen and McGuire, and it was all very zany and fun, and that's how I like my Metal Men.
Sure.
So it comes out to taste. This was a fine book. I mean, the fact that it's Didio, sometimes I forget he does have writing chops.
Honestly, Didio's not a bad writer.
No, I mean, I also enjoyed his Outsiders way back in the day, and when he pops in for an issue or two, like Sideways, right?
They did all Sideways, did they not?
No, because maybe he was co-writer.
I think he was co-writer on Sideways. I think he was there for the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I ended up liking it. It's a different take, on the Metal Men.
Because I like the pages where we actually had like the scientists going to the mountain with the the couple of lab technicians or whatever, and we have like the liquid metal coming up, and it's like, oh shit, something's going down.
And it's calling for him, right? Like
it feels like a sci-fi movie. It feels like, okay, we're introducing the monster here, and he obviously has a sci-fi element where he brings robots with him. But like, I don't know, it felt like I could see this as the start of a movie. I'm kind of hopeful about this 12-issue book. I'm into it so far.
Good. I'm glad. That's what I like to hear, because again, this is the Metal Men are one of those DC properties that like I have a lot of love for, even though I don't have I can't point to you runs that I'm a big fan of.
Sure.
I love the idea. So for someone that's not as familiar to latch on to it, that's good. I mean,
and because I left this to last, actually. I read this right before we started the show. I think I finished this like 2 minutes before you said you're online.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't like dreading it or anything, but it's one of those things where I just didn't know what to expect from it. So I wasn't excited or unexcited. I was just kind of neutral. So I just kind of got left to the end. And I don't know. So far, I'm into. And I'll give Didio credit that despite the fact that we always give him shit for kind of like ruining certain things or having these weird shitty opinions about legacy characters and Wally West and whatever, he does always seem to like has the stuff he writes or works on himself always does seem to be these weird little passion projects that might not even get greenlit otherwise. He's doing Metal Men. He Sideways lasted a bit longer than it might have done. What was it? Was it Demon Knight at the start of New 52? He always seems to give himself these little niche things that he wants to do. He is passionate about some stuff, and I'll commend that. I just wish he was passionate about everything that DC fans were passionate about.
Yeah, it's easy to beat up on him, and as we've seen, because he has been the face of when something doesn't work, he's the one that lays on the grenade. But like I remember listening to him on Fat Man on Batman, the dude knows his stuff. So as much as it's easy to make him the whipping boy for DC, most of the time his heart is in the right place, and you can kind of tell with stuff like this, where, like you said, you can feel the passion for it. Because I'm pulling up some of the other stuff that he's done here.
Yeah.
In the last couple, he did Batman and the Outsiders. I remember that one. OMAC was him. Back in 2011, 2012. Weird Western Tales he did. He did a Metal Men story in Wednesday Comics back in 2009. So the International, no. Future's End, we're not talking about that. That was terrible. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a lot on here. He's mainly been an editor throughout his career, but I'm not mad when he does pop in to write.
No, it's interesting. It's an interesting different voice. But I was into it. I like how it feels like a sci-fi movie. I mean, the art's not like blowing me away. It's dependable,
it's fine.
But it's not,
it's fine.
There's no style to it that I kind of really like or anything like that.
I do like seeing the different versions of the Metal Men, like the slight differences. So like Tina's head shaped different in some of them, and stuff. But yeah, no, it was good. It was better than I thought it was gonna be. Because again, it's Didio. You're like, oh, how could this? Is this just like a vanity thing? He loves Metal Men, so we're gonna write it. And it turns out like it's one of these weird holdovers too with the with metal that they try to do with the what was that line that Sideways came from? Shoot, what was that called, Pete?
What?
That's where we got Terrifics and
The New Age of DC Heroes.
New Age. Yeah, this feels like a weird holdover to that. Like, this should have came out at the same time as those, you know. But again, with all the Doom stuff happening now, with the Dark Multiverse back on the wavelength, like, this feels like it's at the right time. It's weird.
Yeah. So, no, I was into it. What are you giving it, Matt?
I'm gonna give it 7.5.
I'll give it an 8. I was into it. I like what it was doing. I did a good job of just slowing down, just presenting a simple idea of because I like how it starts with Magnus, and we don't really know what he's talking about yet, but he just sounds like he's in a bad place, and like, he's kind of lost it. He's kind of this disgruntled old scientist, but then he gets like this spark of life at the end when he hears this news. He's like, oh no, I've got reasons to keep trying. I've got reasons to try again, and I kind of like that as a motivation. So, 8 out of 10 for me.